since we've seen many of you, and we just wanted to give people an opportunity to ask questions and give a brief overview of what has happened with the Crossnore project. There we go. So we just wanted to get back in touch with so many of you that made this project possible and kind of reiterate what has been accomplished to date, what we still hope to achieve in the future. And thankfully, we had a 1-minute discussion about whether or not to try to have this outdoors on the property, and judging out my window right now, I'm very thankful we did not go that route and we stuck with virtual. But sooner or later, we will get you all out there for a hike to visit this spectacular property. So I'm Kevin Redding. I'm the executive director of Piedmont Land Conservancy. We are go ahead, Brianna, to the next one there. Just a little bit of background. I think we've got about 70 people on here, and not everybody knows exactly what the Conservancy does, but we cover 9 counties in the northern Piedmont of North Carolina. Since Kathy Trainer and friends founded this organization, we've protected about 28,000 acres. We own right now close to 4,000 acres, and we have conservation easements on 16,000 acres, and the remainder of that total is land that we have transferred to state parks or the Wildlife Commission or others. So we've had a lot of great successes around the region. And in Forsyth County, the background there that you are looking at, that farm is what we all know and love as the Children's Home, now the Crossnore School and Children's Home. And we began talks with them. Gosh, it's probably been 7 or 8 years now. I think the first serious talks were in 2013. During that time, the Children's Home, during the midst of those talks, merged or joined forces with the Crossnore School and became the Crossnore School and Children's Home. And thankfully, we were able to stay in everyone's good graces and keep this project going through that merger, and their board and staff were fantastic to work through, and as we continued to work towards that. So go ahead, Brianna. Just a little reminder of the areas that we work in, especially from the Forsyth County standpoint. We've done a lot of work in the Mitchell River watershed. The Mitchell River drains to the Yadkin, and I wouldn't recommend going out to 421 and seeing what the Yadkin looks like today. But had we not done so much conservation in the Mitchell River watershed, it would look even worse today. So we're really interested in the Mitchell River watershed. Go ahead, Brianna. You may know we own and operate the Emily Allen Wildflower Garden. We've owned it since Emily's passing, and we are doing some major renovations there to try to make it more accessible to folks that love wildflowers, folks that love beautiful piece of property. So stay tuned in hopefully in the spring, those renovations will be mostly done, and we look forward to having folks out to enjoy it in the coming months. You may also be familiar with Bethania, where we've worked with the Historical Association and the town and the state to protect one of the most unique townships in North Carolina, a historical setting there. And now lots of trails. It's one of the most popular trails, the Muddy Creek Trail in Forsyth County. So a lot of good use there. So those properties were all great in their own way: history, wildflowers, water quality. We had never had a kind of flagship project in the greater Winston-Salem, Forsyth County area. We had a similar one over here in Guilford County when Jefferson Pilot decided to sell a big property at Hobbs and New Garden Road, and the Conservancy Kathy and others were able to raise several $1 million and buy that property. It is now the Price Park, which is about a 100-acre passive recreational park. It's one of the most popular venues in the city, if not the county. But we had not had that similar type of project in Winston-Salem. And really, since Kathy founded the organization in 1990, I think every year someone approached us and said, what are y'all going to do about that children's home property? And the answer, quite simply, was, well, we can't do anything until they're interested in working with us, because Land Conservancy, we only work with willing landowners to conserve land. So as I said earlier, about 2013, we began working with the board of what was then the children's home and talking to their staff and just letting them know about what the possibilities were should they be interested. And those talks kind of grew on themselves and got a little more serious. Again, they survived the merger. The new staff, the new CEO was very interested in it. And we moved forward with them. Let me move all these faces so I can see here. And we launched the Piece of Land campaign and in 2018. And over the last 2 years, now almost 3 years, we raised just right at $7 million to purchase the conservation easement, to fund the campaign, to fund the stewardship endowment, which is a requirement for us. And at the time, on February 18th, we closed on the conservation easement. So it was recorded at the Forsyth County Register of Deeds. It is now a permanent finding in the record books. So that easement is in place, which at the time we thought this is great. In hindsight, having closed on February 18th and finally reached basically our fundraising goal for the first phase of the project could not have happened at a better time. We are so thankful. We joke about it, we laugh about it, but I really, in all seriousness, had we not reached our goal by early March, I don't know that we would have made it. So it really was a blessing that we were able to do so by mid to late February, get the easement recorded. And when we walked out of the, go ahead, Brianna, let's show the map just for everybody's. So, okay, the map, if you're not familiar, the easement is on right at 90 acres, and it is primarily the farm, which you see from Reynolda Road, which you see from Arbor Acres, which you see from the Boston Thurman neighborhood. But it also includes a small strip of forested and open land along Reynolda Road, because that was real important to us to see that protected. That was something a lot of the donors and supporters that we talked to, it was real important to them to keep that beautiful corridor as open as possible. So Brianna, can you go back up to the prior slide? So I breezed through a conservation easement, but it's important to know not everybody knows what that is or has dealt with it. So basically what that means is that land, those 90 acres, give or take it, I don't remember the exact total, you think it would be burned into my brain, will never be developed. There will never be condos on there, never a shopping center, never residential subdivision. It will always be open land. Further, it cannot be subdivided. So heaven forbid if something happened to a Crossnore school and they had to make decisions, which a lot of other nonprofits are dealing with right now, they could not subdivide that property into smaller units and sell that off. It would always remain one block of property. What it does allow for is continued use of agriculture. They can keep the cows out there just like we all treasure when we see them. They can use it for educational purposes, basically like it has been used for the last 100+ years. The kids can go out there, they can learn about agriculture, they can learn about birds, they can learn about water quality, but it also allows the construction of a publicly accessible trail. And that is kind of phase 2 of this project, which we'll talk just a bit about more in a second. but that's a little unusual for a conservation easement because normally we are dealing with a private individuals, a farmer, for example, and most farmers don't want a public trail going through their property. So as you drive by the property and you see the cattle out there, you see the stream that runs down the center of the farm, building a trail on that property will be a complicated thing. So on this map, we actually show a conceptual trail. We have a trail designer engaged right now who has come up with 2 or 3 different scenarios. And we just got them in this week, and we've not even been able to share them with the Crossnore team. So I'm not comfortable sharing them yet because I just don't want to get out ahead of things. But most likely what we're going to have, instead of one big loop that goes around the perimeter, is 2 loops, and a parking area will be on the Renota Road side and a parking area off the Boston Thurman neighborhood. And one of our major supporters, the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, is working with us to identify a historical figure or a modern figure from the Boston Thurman neighborhood to recognize with that trailhead and parking area. And it will be named after that individual. So in late February or March, we were beginning that process. I think on March, I think it was 9th or 10th, we were scheduled to meet with the Boston Thurman Neighborhood Association and begin the polling process and the thought process of how we select who that individual would be. That meeting got canceled. We thought, well, we'll just push it out a month or 2, and then similarly, those meetings got canceled. So here we are in November, and we are hoping, even if we're not able to meet in person, we will be doing some virtual meetings and trying to identify a path forward for that. So, Brianna. And just a reminder, not everybody is a map person, but the importance of this property, not just the agricultural component of it or the open space of it, it is really the puzzle piece that kind of holds Winston-Salem together. You've got Arbor Acres on the north side, the Methodist retirement home. On the east is the Boston Thurman neighborhood, the historical African-American community. On the west is Buena Vista. And on the south is the West End, the business district, which is kind of a reviving, thriving area, which is adjoined by the high school, the middle school, and then downtown Winston-Salem. So it's not just a random farm out in the middle of the country. It is just a linchpin to all things Winston-Salem. And by the way, if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Greg can call them out or bring attention to it. But just a brief overview of the money. We raised the $6.5 million for the conservation easement. As you would expect, that's the most expensive conservation easement the Land Conservancy's ever been involved with. The stewardship endowment, Piedmont Land Conservancy was able to cover out of a bequest we received from a lady that lived here in Guilford County. And we covered the campaign operations and the administration. So originally, our budget showed a $500,000 line item for the public trail and parking. In talking with the trail designer, we think that is significantly higher than what it's going to take. We think we can build the trail, still the same quality, the same specs and everything for about $300,000. And then we are committed to securing and creating thank you, Palmer, a property management fund, which will be available to the Conservancy and to Crossnore that can help take care of the trail. It can help take care of the property. So long story short, we right now are about $600,000 short of that. When we closed on the conservation easement in February, we had a loose-knit agreement that the city of Winston-Salem was going to commit $200,000 more. Forsyth County was going to put in $200,000 more, and the Land Conservancy, we had a few foundations that we thought we could cobble together the last $200,000. Total that up, that's $600,000. We're done. We're building the trail last fall. There's nothing, or this fall, nothing in the world could happen that would ever slow that down. We were just cruising right to victory. And then somehow or another, the world kind of fell apart in March and April. So we are still committed to it. It is one of our highest priorities as an organization, is to build the trail. And unfortunately, we lost, give or take, 9 or 10 months out of the process of doing that. So Brianna, can you go ahead to the next? Go ahead to the next, I'm sorry. So John, I'll answer that question in just a minute, if that's okay with you. Our tentative timeline is the first quarter of 21, actually beginning now through the first quarter of 21, is we want to finalize the design of the trail and where the parking areas are going to be located, and gain the approvals of the PLC board, the Crossnore various staff, their committees and their board, any other, if we need to involve the city or anyone else in that process, try to get everything lined up in the first quarter so that we can begin to move forward. The second quarter, by the end of June, we would like to make sure we've got all the funding secured and in place that we're going to need for the trail. The third quarter, trail and parking area construction, we'd like to see ground broken, get folks out there, and sometime roughly now, a year from now in 21, we'd love to have a big public trail opening, and whether it's a ribbon cutting or a 5K or just a soft opening, that we'll figure all of that out. But our goal is to let everyone have access to that property and that trail by the end of next year. That may be ambitious. It may be a little conservative. It's just hard to say right now. But that is what we are hopeful of, and we think is a reasonable time frame to be moving forward with that. So, Brianna, just a reminder, I did see Michael Huff signed on a few minutes ago. We would not be sitting here today with the conservation easement recorded and the security of that land being protected and an opportunity to build this wonderful trail for the community without all those folks on the left-hand side of the screen. But in particular, Michael and Amy Huff, they really led the charge to get this done. They did a fantastic job. We have allowed Michael to breathe the last 6 or 7 months because he earned a vacation, but it would be foolish to forget all the great and hard work that he put into it. Just looking at my screen, Royce Huff and Linda Davis, Bill and Betty Gray, I know are on the call. So many people not just contributed funding, but they contributed their connections to other people who could support this. And maybe the most gratifying part of the whole capital campaign was we had not more than 1 or 2 people say they just didn't want to support the project. Everybody obviously is in different financial situations and different phases of their life, different events going on in life, and not everybody can give at the level that they would like to, but almost unanimously, people supported the project. Some supported at a higher level than we ever dreamed they could. Others supported at as good of a level as they could because they had other commitments and other things going on. But it really speaks highly of the philanthropic community in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. But it also speaks for how valuable this piece of property is to that community, how beloved it is to everyone that lives within several miles of that property. And I think with the COVID crisis and kind of having this gap between closing on the easement and construction of the trail, we just want to make sure everyone keeps that continuity of everyone committed to protecting that property. And when we get that trail built and get folks out there on it, we want everybody to have that pride, that personal pride that we all made this happen. This was not Piedmont Land Conservancy made it happen. It was not Michael Huff made it happen. It was hundreds and hundreds of people who made this possible. And our community, your community, our community, we're all going to be better for this for a long, long time to come. Brianna? So just a few other things. Not everybody knows what PLC is working on outside of Forsyth County, but the Cane Creek Mountain Project, that at the end of the day is going to be about 1,000 acres of forested piece of property just south of Burlington in Alamance County. And it is only about a 20-minute drive from downtown Chapel Hill. So we are partnering with the Conservation Fund, with Alamance County, with private donors to secure that 1,000+ acres. Right now, if you just go on the Google and find Cane Creek Mountain Natural Area, you can find directions. There's a parking area, a restroom, and there are 3 to 4 miles of hiking trail out there. A absolutely beautiful piece of property. We think in the end, there will probably be 10 to 12 miles of hiking trail on that 1,000 acres. So we're real pleased with that. Our bread and butter for many, many years has been farmland preservation, because the Piedmont historically and today and even in the future, farming is such a huge part of life here in the Piedmont. So far this year, we've protected 4 family farms totaling pretty close to 500 acres. A few months ago, we bought a piece of property. It's actually in Wilkes County, which we don't normally operate in Wilkes County, but if you're going up Highway 21 towards Roaring Gap, as soon as you start climbing the Blue Ridge Escarpment, what we called the Lassiter property, now the Elkin Creek Headwater Tract, is 240 acres on the right-hand side of Highway 21. We bought it. We're going to transfer it to the town of Elkin, so they're going to own it as a community nature preserve and build trails on it. It also protects Elkin Creek, which is the drinking water supply for the town of Elkin. So lots of benefits to that property. And in the next few weeks, we are going to purchase not purchase a property. We're going to complete a conservation easement on more of the headwaters of the Mitchell River, which is always great because the Mitchell River is one of the cleanest, most intact ecosystems in North Carolina. And then one of our long-standing projects is the Piedmont Greenway. And our goal is to connect downtown Greensboro to downtown Winston-Salem by one continuous greenway. And we're going to be buying 113 acres on that corridor in the next few weeks, which will be a huge boost to the efforts to get that project up and running. So COVID aside, things have not slowed down one bit here at the Land Conservancy. We are working mostly remotely. I'm in the office today. I come in a few days a week. I work from home a few days a week. I'm also a principal of my middle schooler and high schooler right now, as are most of our staff members have kids that they're trying to figure all this out with. But we just wanted to get this group together today, first of all, to thank you and make sure you know how much we appreciate your commitment to this project. But also to give you a bit of an update, because it's been a while since we've all been in touch, and let you know the easement has closed, it's recorded, that property is protected. The next step, hopefully in 2021, will be getting the trail in place, and Catherine Northington is about to sign off, and it wouldn't be fair not to give her some recognition, because as board chair of the Crossnore School, she was fantastic. She was kind of your local champion on the board of directors of Crossnore, and she was fantastic, and we can't thank her enough. So with that, Greg, if you want to help with the chat so we can answer any questions. Or I know, John Davis, you had a question earlier. Let me see if I can scroll to that. So, okay, John, I think your question was on the map. It shows 2 conservation easements, and basically
yes, just what's going to happen to the property that is still owned by Crossnore.
Okay, So everything, so the total campus of Crossnore is about 213 acres. We protected about 90 of that. So do the quick math. They still have about 120 acres that are not subject to a conservation easement. Their goal, and I don't speak for them, but having talked to their staff and their board for the last several years pretty intensively, they fully intend to keep that campus operating for the benefit of as many kids as they can benefit with that. I think Catherine, if you happen to still be on, I'd love for you to comment on that. But that is my best impression, John, is they continue, or they want to keep rolling along, expanding their programs, finding ways to help more kids, and in a way that benefits them.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. It's good to hear from you.
Two questions about the trail. One that was answered in the chat, but for those not looking at the chat, question is who's doing the design? Who's the design firm? And then a larger question about will there be ways to get on the trails from the various neighborhoods that bump up to the children's home, or will we have to access through the parking lots? Or do we know yet?
Okay, so our intent is to have a parking area right off of Reynolda Road where currently the gravel access up to where the barns and the strawberry patch and all is. There will be a parking area for probably 8 to 10 vehicles very close to where the lacrosse field is on the property, or the exercise field is. So that will be an access point. We will have a very similar 8 to 10 car parking area on I'm not oriented, on the Boston Thurman side. We're still trying to figure out with the neighborhood and the school whether that will be on the Crossnore property. It could be on the new middle school property, if that makes sense. And then we will have conversations with Arbor Acres and their leadership about whether they want direct access to the property or not. And we'll work with them in that manner. So I think there will be multiple opportunities to access the property without necessarily parking down at the main entrance to the children's home or the Crossnore School.
That's all that are in the chat. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat, or if you're a Zoom pro and know how to do the hand raise thing, we can do that and unmute you. If anyone's got questions, I think we got a few more minutes.
Is that a hand raise?
I think yeah, Sarah there I saw a hand waving. I think that was a question. Maybe not.
Yeah, that was sort of Sarah.
Sarah and Milton Petty Court.
Is the school at all in jeopardy? There are some outstanding litigation / suits that has to do with long ago child abuse. I think you're probably aware of it. Do you know anything about that?
Sarah, I do not know anything about it. Linda, you certainly have a history with it. Perhaps if you're comfortable speaking, or I'm not familiar with any of that.
I think there have been 3 or 4 lawsuits filed, but the alleged perpetrators, the gentleman is dead and the woman is in, I think the newspaper said, a assisted living. That is alleged to have occurred after I left and after my parents moved away. So I really have no inside knowledge or of what may be going on there. I wish Catherine had still been on the call. She might have been able to share something.
Ashley Wimmer has a question in the chat about what is currently along the property lines. On the Arbor Acre boundary, it's mostly fencing and kind of a brick wall. On the Boston Thurman side, it is mostly a chain link fence. And then on the Buena Vista side, if you know where that sidewalk is, there's kind of that 2 or 3 foot tall rock wall. So this will be one of the more complex trails that we build between, well, first of all, there are cattle that live on the property. So we don't want a public trail going through the middle of a cow pasture. So there will probably need to be some fencing that separates out the cattle from where the public will be. There may need to be some stream crossings that need to be built in, and access points either through that fencing, whether we remove some of the fencing. That's all details that we need to work through with Crossnore. Ultimately, they still own the property. They have most say so in this matter, and we need to make sure that we don't do anything that puts any of their youth or their kids at risk. So will we add shade trees along the trail? Art and Ann, I think there will be a lot of opportunity once we get the trail design and we know exactly where that corridor will be. There will be a lot of opportunities for the public, whether it's Boy Scout groups or Girl Scout groups or church groups or Wildflower groups, to add amenities to that trail. And it may be benches, it could be signage that talks about where the water from that creek ends up, how it gets to the Atlantic Ocean from getting rained on the Crossnore farm. But absolutely some native, preferably trees and shrubs and beautification. We would love to kind of partner, or even if the Land Conservancy is not involved, we'd love to connect the right people at Crossnore with the various community groups that may be interested in that. And Wilson, I see your comment. That is certainly a possibility. Once we get the trail figured out, it may not be that we wait to get the entire thing cleared and grubbed and built perfectly to code. It may come in more kind of a rolling process to get it, because as we've learned with a lot of other trails in this region over the last few months, once people start using them, they fall in love with them and they don't quit using them. The trail usage throughout our region has just skyrocketed this year, as people have sought easier chances to get out and get outside of the house, and certainly to distance themselves from other people. Ashley has commented, I think getting Winston-Salem Garden Council partner is the plan for it to be. Catherine, the plan as of now is the trail will be made out of a kind of a crushed concrete mixture. So it certainly will not be dirt, but it won't be the same consistency of asphalt. I think Jenny Weiler signed in. Jenny has been a big advocate throughout that part of, if not all, but definitely part of the trail needs to be handicap accessible. And we will work with our government partners and other funding partners to make sure that we can live up to that wish as well. Lauren, we don't have anything planned right this minute for fundraising. We certainly would love to hear from folks if they're interested in ideas or other things. First of all, we need to get the trail designed and actually get a cost basis for exactly how much we're going to need. And then we have a few foundations that I think are still committed to the project and now will be in a different cycle year, and we think they'll still be interested. And we need to figure out the city and the county's financial situation. Last time I spoke with them was in April, and there was not a city or county person who was willing to say they may be willing to spend $10 in the future because the economy was just crashing right from underneath them. But I think part of that has changed. There may be some opportunities with state and even federal funding that might be able to be accessed to help build this trail. So we're kind of monitoring all of that. So if we run into dead end on all those, we may do some more public fundraising. Right now, what I think is we may need to do a small amount of public fundraising, but I don't think there's going to be a major push like we had back at the end of 2019 to get us over that hump that we needed to close on the conservation easement. Sherry, I have no reason to think that you won't be able to walk your dog on the trail. If I build a trail and I tell my wife that we can't bring our dogs out there, then that's not going to go over well in my household either. So I hope everybody has a dog that they can walk on the trail. I think it will end up being about 1.5 to 2 miles, depends on exactly where the route goes, but it should be enough for a good, healthy walk out on there. And of course, on the leash. Thank you, Ann. Any other questions? We tried not to take up your whole day, but I hope this has been helpful. Greg, myself, I'm happy to stay on for 5 or 10 more minutes. If people need to start dropping off, they are more than welcome to. But we appreciate this chance and taking time out of your day just to learn a little bit more about the project. And most of all, just know how much we appreciate your support for getting us to where we are today.